Hey guys, it's Scott here with another episode of Dark Souls 3 Weapon Mastery, the series where we take the game just entirely too seriously and try to make it into an MLG sport, which it never will be, but hey, today we're going to be talking about the Hollowslayer Greatsword, one of my favorites, so let's get started. So you get the Hollowslayer Greatsword by transposing the soul of the curse-rotted Greatwood. At about 40 strength and 40 dex, it has around 516 AR, which is pretty good. So what is going to be normal for these videos is I'm not really going to talk about the moveset. You can obviously experiment with that for yourself. It's a lot better that you do it yourself rather than just watch it happen. But I'm going to talk about what moves are actually really useful in PvP and which ones are actually not that great. So luckily this weapon only has one move I would consider pretty useless, and that is the follow-up two-handed R2. So the first two-handed R2 will give you a really nice poke, and then the follow-up is this kind of awkward, really low-range, high-stamina, low-damage uppercut thing that's really not good. You get very little hyper armor during it. It's slow, it barely hits anywhere. I would definitely recommend not using this attack pretty much ever, unless you know they're going to roll directly into it. So we don't learn by swinging at the air, we learn by swinging at players. So the first thing I want to show is exactly how powerful the counter capabilities of this weapon are. Now for those who don't know, a counter hit is basically when you hit an opponent while they're just about done finishing an animation. So say they do an attack, they whiff it, and you hit them right as their animation is ending, you'll get a counter hit, which does significant bonus damage. You'll also get more bonus damage if you're wearing the Leo ring and you're doing a thrusting attack, of which basically all of the counters with this weapon will be. So that's why I definitely recommend wearing the Leo ring with this build. You can easily hit counter hits for over 1,000 damage with pretty much no effort. You just have to bait them into a swing and it works. So as I use this weapon more and more, I started realizing I was basically neglecting all of the regular R1s and just doing R2 pokes. I sort of ended up playing this like a mega rapier with hyper armor that's a little bit slower. And I think that is how you should use this weapon, as a giant rapier. And you have to get used to the timings because they are a little different. It's much more unforgiving because you need to get to the point where hyper armor begins on your attack. Otherwise, you'll be interrupted before you actually start swinging. Using this method of combat will make you really good at positioning and spacing because you always need to just narrowly dodge an attack while getting your poke and superior range in. And even if you do get hit by the attack, hyper armor will probably have started and you'll still trade and get a huge counter hit. So the pokes are absolutely the biggest strength of this weapon. Now, it seems very limiting that I just tend to use only one type of attack with this weapon, but that's entirely not true. You have so much control over direction, speed, timing, everything with the R2 swings. If you do a charged R2, you can make it extremely quick or extremely slow. So a good way to screw players up and make them roll into your swings is do a regular R2 and do that for a while. Make them think that's what you're going to be doing, and then randomly throw in a slightly longer but not fully charged R2. Chances are they're eventually just going to roll into your attack. You have to time it perfectly, but this is something you should definitely practice because every time you screw with their timings, it's going to make them more and more confused every time you swing, and they're not going to know when to roll. This happens to be especially useful against people that really like to parry. If you get parried while you're mixing up your timings over and over again, the only answer is they just got lucky, that's it. There's no way they can predict exactly what type of attack and how long you're going to hold it for. So if you do get parried, don't chalk it off to you screwing up. They just got really lucky. That or you were just repeating the same attack too many times. But if you change your timing every attack, you'll pretty much be unparryable unless you're really unlucky. Speaking of parries, missing a charged R2 on purpose is a great way to bait in an attack, which almost guarantees a parry. Unless they're really unpredictable, in which case parry baits like this don't work because you're probably fighting a really good player, so don't bother with cheap tricks like this. Also related to parries, if you are perfect with your timing, you get a guaranteed wake-up hit unless they have the Karthus Blood Ring on. So basically, if you hit a parry and you time your R2 perfectly, it's an unavoidable attack, but this requires a lot of practice. I miss it a lot. It's really hard. It's like a frame-perfect thing, so you need to practice this a lot, but once you get it locked down, you pretty much get a bonus 400 damage after every parry or every backstab, every wake-up there is. While remaining locked on does function okay, doing the pokes free aim is actually a lot better because you can predict where they're going to come out of their iframes in a roll and already be there swinging. This happens to make poking way more effective, but it's a little bit more unsafe too because you might just completely miss them as well. So once you get good at predicting exactly where they're going to roll, your pokes will become way more effective. So try gauging where they're going to roll and aim there. Don't aim for where they start the roll, aim for where the roll is going to end, and it's a much more effective method of poking. So I talk about the pokes a lot, but there are uses for the other attacks of this weapon. For example, the two-handed R1s actually give you pretty significant hyper armor. It only lasts about half a second, but the full attack animation only lasts about a full second anyway, so if someone is right up in your face and will not get off of your ass, don't be afraid to throw out two R1s. If they start swinging when you're already on your downswing, you won't get stunned, and they probably will get stunned, so don't be afraid to use the hyper armor on this weapon as well. So overall, the Hollowslayer Greatsword really comes down to the art of counter hits and poking. That's the main strength of the build. If you're looking for a fast one-handed weapon, I mean, you should be using a straight sword anyway. So if you really want to master the counter hit, master the poke, and all of that stuff, then the Hollowslayer Greatsword is a really good option. It has other attacks too, like the running R1 is, I don't know, it seems like it's not as good as it was, at least in Dark Souls 2. You cover way less ground, so it's not good for catching people that are rolling away or anything like that, so I say you should stay with mostly the pokes and occasionally throw in some regular two-handed R1s if they're up in your face. For the most part, though, this is like the supreme counter-hit poking weapon, so definitely give it a try. It's a really good weapon, and thank you for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time for the next weapon, which I'm not sure what I'll do yet, but we will see.